Alright, I've been drilling lots and lots of holes, and you can see that's going to look pretty nice when I get it lit up right. Okay, it is actually going to look pretty nice. Getting to a scary spot, drilling out the moon. I don't like spade bits, and I don't have one of the Forester bits. I don't have one of these for drilling that out with. I don't like that either. So this scares me a little bit. I can't put it on the normal base for my drill press. What I'm doing instead is using a piece of 4x4 I have left over from when I built the aquarium stand. That was a while back. One other thing. This is a scroll saw bit. Pretty narrow. The top isn't. It's narrow enough I can see how I can get it down into those grooves to cut those grooves out. But my big problem is going to be cutting the pilot holes. The reason I said that's a big problem is here on the snowy pine, there's no way I can cut a pilot hole big enough for this guy right here without altering the pattern a little bit. So I'm going to have to alter the pattern right there. I'm going to have to make that line thicker. But I can cut a hole for everything else just fine, like there. The worst one is right there, and I can see if I cut my hole just right, that one will be okay. And the other ones all have big patterns to them, so I'm not worried about them. So it's the snowy pine that's going to be the worst one. So let me get at this one, because this one scares me. When that's done, that's my last hole I have to drill other than the pilot holes for the scroll saw blade. So let me get it done, and I'll come back. And I don't like using spade bits. I'll be back in a little bit. Well, mission accomplished. It's not that they don't work, it's just I don't like using them. Yeah, the backs of these things are going to be pretty rough. I should have put tape across the back, and that would have prevented all that fraying right there, or change the speed of the drill bit. But one side's going to look pretty, one side's not. That's the important part, is the side that looks pretty. Alright, now I got to figure out what the minimal size hole is for me and Mr. Scroll saw blade. Once I get those holes done, it's time to uncrate the scroll saw and get going with it. That's the fun part. Back in a little bit. We got a scrap piece of board. I know the 1/8 size holes won't work because I had to cut those for the falling stars. And you can see that won't get through that hole. So we knocked it up one size bigger. I am using the 9/64 size drill bit. I'm just going to keep knocking it up one size until I get it through. I'll come back and report what size drill bit worked on this particular scroll saw blade. Alright, back in a bit. Alright everyone, there's two ways to get this in there. The 3/16 drill bit drills a hole right there, and this guy will slide right through that hole. See? Now, what I did here is I took the 1/8 inch drill bit, I drilled two holes beside each other, then connected them with the third hole. I can get it through that way as well. So there's two different ways to do this. Now for me to just start drilling holes and get all these holes lined up so I've got this thing good to go, where I can use the 3/16, I'm going to. But where I can't, I'm going to use this 1/8. And I'm going to do the 2-3 hole trick just to get that to work. And there's only a couple of spots where I can't use that 3/64 drill bit. So I'm going to start with the big drill bit first and then come back and hit it with the small one. Back in a bit. Alright everyone, I got all my pilot holes drilled as best as I can. This tree is going to give me trouble in a few spots, and I know it. Catfishing is going to give me trouble in 2 spots right there and there. I might have to get the Dremel out and do something about that. Or I might have to figure out how to get the pins out of one of these and just use it temporarily and see how long it holds up with a missing pin, with a loose pin. We'll see. I might have to cheat somehow. But anyhow, time to get the scroll saw opened up and see what's in the box. I'll be back in a bit. Alright everyone, my first attempt with the scroll saw off a scrap piece of wood did not go so well. You can see I got some bad cuts. The star came out okay. I could fix it with a file. The moon, I messed it up. I got some jaggy bad cuts. So I'm going to sit down and practice and just try to freehand a few things for a little while to get a feel for this thing before I get back to cutting out any of these others. Disappointed, but not too bad. I've got 5 or 6 blank pieces, and that's just a bunch of drilling, and it didn't take that long, 10-15 minutes. So let me get practicing on my scrap wood. I'll be back in a bit. Alright everyone, you can tell I had some success this time. That cutout looks exactly like a fish. What I did is I upped the speed of the blade, upped the tension, and basically made a couple of puzzles. Kind of like this. I just took some of my scrap and basically cut out puzzle shapes. So, time for me to get going on this fish. This is the last thing I'm going to do tonight. It's getting kind of late. I'm tired. If I keep going, I know I'm going to screw up worse than I did with the moon already. So let me get going on this one. I'm just going to cut this last fish out. I'll show you the end result when I'm done. Well, what do you think? Think I got a fish? I think you'll get the point across from the backside. They look like fish. So what I need to do now is actually get a file and clean them up some because they're kind of rough. You can tell that. But I'm getting the hang of this thing, and that was the point. That's why I made some puzzle pieces earlier. I'm calling it quits for the night because you can tell I got some delicate pieces up there. They're going to need some cutting to look right. And as tired as I am, I can tell I made mistakes on this fish. I shouldn't have if I was wide awake. But I followed the outline fairly well, actually. So I'm going to get some rest. I will hit this up tomorrow. This is actually quite fun, cutting these. And I figured it would be, because I'm actually cutting shapes out of wood, you know. And when I made the puzzle pieces, that was very enjoyable. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with the puzzle yet. I think I'm going to lightly sand it down and glue a picture to the front of it and then cut it out. That'll be fun. I got a couple of pictures I can think of to go on there. I just have to resize them to fit. Anyhow, I'm shutting this down. It's still in the garage, as you can tell. Oh, there's the good old drill press. So, see you guys later. I'm here to talk about using the saber saw. Scroll saw, sorry. I've cut out 2 of these things now, plus practicing for about 45 minutes last night on scrap wood. I'm still not comfortable with the thing. Alright, it is not the easiest thing in the world to use. You can see I'm not perfect with this thing. I'm going to have to do a lot of cleanup with files and sanding and that sort of thing to get it to look right. Plus, the stem broke off the pumpkin as I was cutting on it. I need to trim that a little bit more, and I'm afraid to even try it with that thing because it's not as precise as you want. You can see I was sawing it when it broke. Now, a couple of things I have learned with it. One, you almost have to have double vision because this thing is just bouncing everywhere as you're cutting. I don't know if I got the cutting speed up too high or too slow or what, but it's very hard to keep this thing on the line you're trying to cut. Second, here, let's let you guys see me while I'm doing this, shall we? Second thing I've learned is that when you're cutting out shapes like this, cut out big, large areas, then cut the details out. If you do that, you're going to be a lot happier with the thing. Simply because if you try to cut the details as you cut the large areas, you're going to mess up and cut something you don't like. Alright, now on the catfishing one, I cut the cat's foot off, and that's because one of my neighbor's kids screamed and yelled at the precise moment I was coming near that foot. And I looked up and looked down, and the foot was cut off. So I'm going to glue that on. The stem for the pumpkin right here came off. I'm going to trim that up somehow or another and glue it back on so that they look right. Alright, I got 2 more of these to do. As you can tell, sun's about to set, so I'm going to have to take it into the garage and work in there. Plus, I got a 6 o'clock curfew on this. So 6 o'clock comes around, I'm done working on this for today. I will be back at it soon. I'll give you guys another update. I still have the snowy pine to cut out, the one that scares me the most. And I gotta fix this one. I think I can fix this one now. I don't think this one's ruined. It's just not going to look as good as it should. But anyhow, I will be back as soon as I get those things taken care of and show you what I've done. I got to move it in the garage right now. I've lost my daylight, and I got much better lighting in the garage. So I'll be back in a bit. off button. All right, everyone, here is the two of the slides finished, pretty close to finish. They're ready for finishing anyhow. I've sanded, I removed the paper backing. You can see it's a little rough in a couple of spots. I had to glue a couple of pieces back on. That glue is setting right now. Oh yeah, it's setting up pretty well right now. But these guys are ready just for their last finishing, okay? I wanted to show them to you. The scroll saw work came out better than I thought it would. You can still see a couple of spots where I made mistakes. This is the first time I ever used a scroll saw, and I did not know how much skill is required on that thing. It's definitely not something you just pick up and start using. Okay, I'm going to show you on one of the next slides how the scroll saw works and how I'm using it. Any experts out there are more than welcome to correct me. I'm about to start on the electrical. Right here we have the bottom, the top, the two intermediate front and back, and both sides. What I'm going to do to provide power is I'm going to use a size M jack. I have a 12-volt DC power source, and I'm going to use some of Model Man Tom's light LED light strips, Modeler's brand. There you go, LED light strips to light this thing up with. First thing I got to do is, the package here says requires a 7/16 mounting hole. So I need to drill a 7/16 mounting hole in this thing, probably right about there. Now one of the problems with this is this jack is not as deep as the wood. This is 3/4 inch wood. This jack is a 1/2 inch long. So I'm going to have to countersink a hole big enough to get that nut in there, which means bigger than 7/16. Now 7/16 is a little bit under a 1/2 inch. So if I go up over a 1/2 inch, countersink the hole, it'll be fine. I'm out to the drill press to do this. I'm going to bring you guys along to at least see the setup and see how it's going. Okay, I have the drill press set up with the 7/16 size drill bit. I want to drill this. Now I'm going to show you the side view. I want to kind of center this, actually off to one end to be better, and a little bit up there. Okay, this one's going all the way through. Then I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to countersink just enough that I can get that nut on there and tighten that down once I get the wiring done. So back in a second. Well, it turns out that was not 7/16. This is. And that hole is in a bad location for 7/16. It's too far. If I center it on that, it's probably okay, but I'm going to push it up a little bit. So there we go. I just tried to stick that through there and it wasn't going to fit in that hole. That hole actually was 15/64. Yeah, 7/16. Yeah, it's close to 1/2 inch. This looks like it's close to 1/2 inch. The other one was not. The other one was closer to a 1/4 inch. So let me get drilling. I'll be back in a minute. Well, we have success. My power jack is now installed. Well, not installed, but the hole is big enough for the power jack. Now, I got two issues I need to deal with. One, I got to countersink this hole big enough to get that nut in there. I'm not sure how big that nut is, but I'm just going to use different size drill bits until she will fit. That's what I'm going to do. And yeah, it's always rough on the underside. If I put some masking tape on there, it wouldn't be. But that's the underside. You're not going to see it that much. I'll be back in a bit once I get this countersunk. Well, we got the 1/2 inch bit right there. That's the largest non-spade bit. And as you can see, that's not fitting. So what I'm going to have to do is go with a spade bit. Joy. I don't like those things. I've said it before. And if I have to, I'm going to get the Dremel out and just carve a hole in it to fit that nut. That would be ideal. Well, not ideal. But anyhow, let me get going on it. It can't be too much bigger than a 1/2 inch, because you look at it, it's not too much bigger than a 1/2 inch. So I'll be back in a minute. I got a 5/8 inch spade bit. We're going to try that next.